Hello, welcome to the Prado Museum. We are here for our weekly sessions in English. Thank you so much to our donors for making sessions like this possible. We are the American Friends of the Prado Museum. You can check us out as well as our sister organization, Fundación Amigos del Museo del Prado. Very excited to be with you today in room 29. This is our main gallery upstairs in the Prado to take a look at this installation, this temporary exhibition of the work of Juan Muñoz. So we're going to be exploring these beautiful figures a bit here today and how they are interacting with our collection here at the Prado and this space where we find ourselves. So as we take an initial look at these figures in kind of zooming out a little bit, we can see that they are engaged in some kind of conversation. They are arranged interacting with each other. Some of them face each other. They have particular gestures that they make toward one another. And we can kind of interpret them as being in some kind of interaction with each other, a conversation, you might say, and are situated in this space among these beautiful big paintings by Rubens. So thinking about the work of Juan Muñoz, we're going to get a chance to understand how are we meant to interact with these pieces? How are they meant to make us feel? Especially within this environment. So this work is called Conversation Pieces 3, and we can take a quick look at the placard over here. Conversation Pieces is a sort of genre of paintings that was interested in talking about interaction, talking about relationships, and situating figures that are literally in conversation with one another together and filling up a composition. What happens when you situate a lot of different characters in one space together, all interacting, as a viewer, we get a chance to make guesses about all the different things that are happening in a scene, but in a way we're not privy to know the details. And we feel this happening a little bit with this work by Muñoz. While we look at the characters interacting with each other, I don't know what they're talking about, what's going on between them, and that puts me a little bit aside as a viewer. There's a really great comparison in this space that we can make to a work by Rubens. So if you join me over here for a moment, we're going to take a look at The Garden of Love, which is another example of a conversation piece painted by Rubens. So again, we're going to see a composition that is packed, filled with characters who are working together to have an interaction between each other. So we're arriving here to our painting, here by Rubens. This was painted soon after his marriage to his wife. But as we can see in the composition, it is packed filled with interactions. We see this couple, him looking at her. We have cherubs scattered among. We have some of the characters looking directly at us as the viewer, giving us some direct address. We have the center of the painting, which you have different characters interacting with their environments. And these kind of compositions, packed filled with these conversations, really engage us, make us interested in as a viewer to see all of the different activities happening. But they also, again, like Muñoz, are kind of distancing us in some way. I don't know what the subject of this conversation is, and so me as a viewer, I'm set a little bit aside from this conversation. We're gonna head back to take a look at conversation pieces in more detail. And as we do, I want to talk a little bit about Juan Muñoz. So he is a Madrileño. He was born in 1953 in Spain, in Madrid. And during that time, that was during the Franco dictatorship. And so his upbringing is very much connected to that experience in society at the time. This was a time when silence was the norm, where there were sort of rigid social structures. And so these themes about exclusion become really poignant when you think about Juan Muñoz's life and the way his experience being from Spain. In 1970, he left the country in order to study outside, And this is another interesting layer of his work. What happens when you distance yourself from a place that you know intimately, and how might you react to it in a different way? Now, diving into these figures in a little bit more detail, as a person who's walked through this space many times, we can notice they're a bit shorter than an average adult person, which is one element that makes me very drawn in to understand what's happening with them. They are integrated directly in the space where I walk as a visitor as well. So I am invited as a visitor to get close to them, to interact with them. But as you can see, it's very difficult to become intimate with these figures. Even though I might look this character right in the face, if you look closely, there's actually these lines over the eyes. I'm not able to interact with these figures. So while I see them frozen in engagement, I'm not invited to join this conversation. Another element about this work of Muñoz, and we see throughout his work, is also these individuals are very much blurred in their identity, right? We don't know their gender. They all look pretty identically the same, except for their form, right? Their bodies are the only thing that differentiates them. And the bodies are a really interesting part of this work. They're crumpled, they're sort of moving to the side, and these silhouettes are extremely interesting, and they also draw connections to other elements and other works of art history that we see in this very museum. So Juan Muñoz, he describes the Prado Museum as being an extremely important part of his upbringing. Like many Madrileños, this becomes part of your house when you live here in Madrid, the Prado Museum. And so studying art history was a great and important part of his work. And in these pieces specifically, we draw connections not only to the Garden of Love, but some other important works from our collection. So I have this work here, this work here by Goya, which makes a really interesting comparison. So this is people in sacks, and you can see how much these forms feel very connected. Again, creating ambiguity with the body part of the individual and leaving only the head out. So this makes a really interesting connection that scholars have made between this work of Muñoz and these forms. But there's an even more well-recognized silhouette that is well known, that feels very connected to these works as well, which is that of our meninas, right? So the general shape that we could recognize all across Madrid, all across the world, of having these big dress bottoms at the bottom of a form also creates an echo to these works. So this is a really interesting layer in this work, but I also want to talk about for a second how important the curator is in the work of Muñoz, right? Because depending on where you put these works anywhere in the world, you're going to have a different feeling about what they mean. So for a second, I want you to imagine this space is filled with thousands of people every day. This is one of the main corridors of the museum, and to have the opportunity to walk among these characters while you're taking a look at Rubens is really important to consider. To me, it reminds me of my experience walking around in a city, and that experience of passing people that I don't know in the street and wondering to myself, what are they doing? Who are they? Where are they going? And it's that kind of human interest in the other that the curator is really driving for us as we're in this space. Another layer that I find really interesting about this work is while these characters are engaging in their environment, they're engaging with each other, they're actually not looking at the walls at all. They're not interested in all the Rubens, the masterpiece that they have among them. They are interested in their conversation. So that's a really, I think, important layer as we consider this work and how it makes us feel to be so put apart from what's happening here. And Juan Muñoz is pulling us into this feeling about what it is to be a witness, what it is to be among a scene that you're not invited into, and how we can sort of live in that tension in a really interesting way in this space with this collection. Thank you so much for joining me today for this session in English. We look forward to seeing you next week.